In the same vein as my appearance out of nowhere into the publishing at the Provincetown Advocate, 6 months after I started working there, and I had, and the newspaper was sold right, a month and a half or two after I'd come, and it was bought by a reporter and former reporter and editor for the Providence Journal, who was a local boy. And he took a look at my writing, and he looked at how much they were paying me by the column inch. And I thought he was going to fire me. He called me in the second day, and he said, instead of firing me, he said, "I've got big plans for you. I'm putting you on salary." And, the salary was $11,000 a year. So it was much salary, and it was, half of what I was making, but I sure felt like a journalist. And the first person that he hired about 3 months later was a guy named Greg Katz, who became lifelong friends with me. And because, he was under me in the experience level, I had like 6 months on the job, and he was just starting out. Somehow I became his mentor and his editor, and sort of walked him through the paces. And he went on to wonderful things in journalism. He became the head of the AP bureau in London, and went to all the wars, and he spent years in Mexico City as the bureau chief there, and for other newspapers. So he worked for the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel. I don't know if he worked for the Herald. I don't think so, but the Dallas Morning News he worked for before he went on to the AP. And so he was out of the same mold. He was just a kid out of college, with loved sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and loved history and loved literature, but he wasn't trained as a journalist. And I think it was this was sort of right after the Woodward and Bernstein book that shook Washington down to its roots, and it was there that journalism as a degree in college came about, because there was such a tremendous number of people who wanted to write, and thought journalism was the way to make their way in the world, and which is a beautiful thing, but in many ways, but I'm not sure that produced any more good journalists than what the world was doing before journalism schools became sort of the going thing.